Hi, my name is Lisa Rezende, and I'm Vice President of Education at Force, Facing Our Risk of Cancer Empowered. And we are thrilled to have this special HBOC Week Google Hangout here, sponsored by Breast Cancer Answers, with Dina Roth, the author of Previvors, and Lisa Martin, a Previvor um, profiled in her book. So today is part of Hereditary Breast and Ovarian Cancer Week, and this is the week between September that has both September in it, with September being Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and October, Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So in this week between the two, we have Hereditary Breast and Ovarian Cancer Week, and yesterday was Previvor Day, which is the day that we honor the previvors, which are people who are facing a predisposition to cancer. That predisposition can be due to a genetic mutation or due to other factors in their family that makes them realize that they are predisposed to cancer. And so I want to start out with Dina and introduce her and have her talk about what previvors are and what inspired her to write this book. Dina?
Hi, thanks for having us. A previvor is a person who has not had cancer but has a predisposition to developing it. For some breast cancer previvors, that means having a BRCA mutation. For others, it means having a strong family history or other risk factors. The reason why I wrote this book was about 6 years ago. I was working as a professional journalist. I write for national magazines, and I was approached by 5 women living in my neighborhood that I'd never met before. Lisa was one of them, along with Amy, Mady, Rory, and Suzanne. And they told me that they were previvors, and I never heard the word before, so they told me what that was. And they said that they had lived with a high risk. They all made decisions to protect themselves. And while they were going through all of this, it was very difficult, and they had each other to rely on and to talk to, but they didn't really have a book, something that they could go to and any kind of support in that sense. So they asked me to write a book for them about previvors. And I went and did research to find out more about this whole new way of looking at breast cancer, and I couldn't believe that there was no book out there to help women like this. So I immediately agreed to write the book and told their stories along with interviewing more than 70 experts, and that's how we came up with the book Previvors.
Excellent. And so Lisa, can you tell us a little bit about the previvor experience?
Sure.
What is it like to live with this risk?
Well, when you're going for screening every 6 months and you're finding different lumps and risk factors, and in my family, my grandfather had the BRCA2 mutation, which was passed down to my mother. They both passed away of breast cancer. It's very stressful. And for me, I didn't really have a lot of people to talk to. And I met Amy through school, and we started talking, and she knew my mother was sick at the time. And we started talking about our risk factor, and she was telling me what she did to reduce her risk. So as a previvor, I did my homework. I spoke with my doctors locally, and then I went online and I found Force, which was an amazing resource. I went on to their boards and I was asking lots of questions, and I just found it unbearable living with the risk. And when I had my final scare, I decided this is the time I think I'm going to do something about it to reduce my risk, and I chose a surgical option, which was a prophylactic mastectomy. Now, while that may sound drastic to some, the procedure has advanced beyond where it is when my mother had her mastectomy. The plastic surgeon, that aspect of it, it's not as extreme as people would think. I went to good doctors in New York. They removed the tissue and the cells, and they reconstructed me in a 3-hour surgery, and the recovery was manageable. And I never looked back. And now my experience is a lot different. I try to help others. I don't like to tell people what to do because it's a very individual decision. You need to, look at your history. You need to talk with your either genetic counselor or your doctor. You need to meet other people, and consult with Force and look at the info they have to provide and make your own decision on what's right for you.
Thank you. So I think a couple things in your story really ring true from what we've heard from the community. The first is that your grandfather had cancer, And male breast cancer can be a sign of a hereditary cancer in the family, whether it's due to BRCA mutation or other mutations. And I'm really glad that you brought that out. And the second thing that I wanted to turn to Dina to talk to, since she talked to a number of different Previvors, is the different options. You don't have to have had surgery to be a Previvor, correct, Dina?
Right, absolutely. And to make it clear, the 5 women in the book, including Lisa, they all ultimately did have prophylactic mastectomies, but they came to their decisions very differently. I mean, some of them immediately, the second they found out they had a risk, they said, "Sign me up. I want my breast tissues all out, and I want to have reconstructive surgery and move on with my life." But others took years with increased surveillance, or even ignoring their test results and not even dealing with it. Every single Previvor deals with this information differently. So I want to make that clear that the women in my book, they ultimately had the same decision, but they all came from very different places.
And I can say my own personal experience. I chose surveillance for a very long time. It's a process. And then, like Dina said, I ultimately chose surgery, but that was not my initial, that was my absolute last resort.
But to answer your question, there are other options. There are lifestyle changes, obviously exercising, eating a healthy diet, all of those things. There's increased surveillance, which obviously will not lower your risk for breast cancer, but it can help you catch it at the earliest, most treatable stages. So you can talk to your doctor about what your regimen should be, maybe getting a mammogram more often, starting at an earlier age, adding MRI or ultrasound. There are even more advanced options, and that's something that everyone should talk to their doctors about. There's chemo prevention, different drugs out there that can help lower risk, and then there are the surgeries as well.
Excellent. So as you started doing more research this and meeting more women, how did you find the need for social support and how women can reach out and find social support when find out that they are a Previvor?
Well, the thing that helped me the most was force, to be honest with you. The boards there, there's so many women out there that are willing to help you and tell their story. And I have to tell you, nobody told me what to do. They just shared their story, and I think that's what you want to hear, so you can make your own decision. So for me, it was that. And then when I met the other women that are featured in the book, we all got together, and they showed me firsthand. Some of them already had surgery. I was terrified. They showed me what surgery entails. They showed me what the surgery looks like, and that support was well needed, because I don't think I would have been able to make the decision on my own. Not to mention my doctors. I went to doctors Ashikari and Salzburg. They were extremely supportive and provided me with all the information I needed to make the decision.
And I think finding that quality information is really an issue, both in the decision-making process to test. So here we're at Breast Cancer Answers. We may have survivors out there who think that cancer runs in their family and are deciding whether or not to test. And a survivor can have a relative that is a Previvor. I'm a Previvor. My mother had ovarian cancer, and I found a very different experience from when I was initially considered high risk for ovarian cancer from family history to being high risk for both breast and ovarian when I tested positive for BRCA1 mutation. Can you talk a little bit about people who are making choices about ovarian cancer risk, Dina, who had mutations? Did you talk to women about this?
Sure, yes. Well, in a case like Lisa did not have a high risk for breast cancer because of a BRCA mutation. It was strictly other risk factors, and that's why she made the decision she did. But when a person, family history and the abnormal biopsy results and all those things. But in the case of a BRCA mutation, you not only have a high risk for breast cancer, you also have a very, very high risk for ovarian cancer compared to the general public. And in terms of what that means, there are different options. The thing is, the surveillance is not great for ovarian cancer. The signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer are very similar to other signs and symptoms of many medical issues, such as bloating and things like that. So a lot of people miss it. And when you catch it early, then it's highly treatable. The problem is most people don't catch it early. And so surgery is definitely one of the strong options. You could also take birth control pills, but then that increases your risk for breast cancer. So these are all things that you should talk to, not only with your doctor, but we also recommend seeing a genetics counselor, where you can go through FORCE, through the National Society of Genetic Counselors. These are all ways you can find someone who knows all of these issues, knows the options, could really go over your risk with you and help you decide what to do.
So the women in your book, the ones that were BRCA who were talking about ovarian cancer risk, and did all of the women have very similar backgrounds of having cancer in their family that they knew about? Or what were the differences in the backgrounds of the women that you talked to? Because I know Lisa had male breast cancer and her mother had breast cancer. What other types of family situations did you see when you met these women?
Sure. In Rory's case, Rory did have a BRCA mutation. Her mother died of ovarian cancer. Her sister was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So even though she had a high risk for breast cancer, in her mind, it was ovarian cancer that she was living in fear of. And she did, wind up having her ovaries removed and having a full hysterectomy along with a mastectomy. Suzanne, same thing. I mean, Suzanne was the one of the 5 women that was not Jewish, which, women of people of Ashkenazi Jewish descent, they have a 1 in 40 odds of having a BRCA mutation compared to about 1 in 500 in the general population. So your risk is much greater, but that doesn't mean people who aren't Jewish can't have a BRCA mutation, which is the case for Suzanne. Suzanne's mom died when she was 4 years old. She grew up without a mother, and she's the one of the 5 women that literally the second she found out she was at risk, she said, I'm done, let's just move on with this, and she had the mastectomy and then eventually did have the ovaries removed as well. And, so they all came from very different backgrounds. Mady she saw the cells in her breast were changing, and it was scary to her, and it was basically seemed to be proliferating more and more to the point where she said the next stop is breast cancer, and I'm not going there. And she just had the surgery before it even got to that point. So they all come from very different backgrounds and very different reasons why they did what they did.
Excellent. And one of the things I really love about your book, Dina, is how you talk about the different aspects. Because a lot of times when we talk about Previvors, we just are thinking about surgery or screening. But you talked about financial, you talked about family aspects, how this works with children. And so what types of issues with speaking to their children do Previvors face?
You want to take that?
Yeah, I can
answer that.
Well, my kids were pretty young at the time. It's so hard. You don't know what to tell them without scaring them. And even the other day, my daughter asked me about it, and she's 17 now. So, but when she was younger, I mean, I basically told them they knew what happened with my mother. They knew she died of breast cancer. And I told them that I'm at an increased risk and that I'm doing something to prevent getting it. And at that time, they were young enough that they took that as the answer. And that was it. However, my daughter now is 17, and the other day she said to me, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And I said, yeah, make sure you check yourself. You have to check all the time. And she goes, oh, definitely, because after what you had to go through, like, it kind of scared her. So we actually had a discussion the other day about it, and I was explaining risk, and, unfortunately, it is in our family, and it's just something you need to be aware of and stay on top of. And I tried to assure her that everybody has something in their family. So if this is ours, this is what we'll deal with. And not to be scared, but to be empowered, and prevention is key. So, talking to the children's hard because you don't want to scare them. At least I didn't want to scare my children.
Exactly.
One day they'll read the book.
Well, that's a huge message, too, in the book, is that previous generations, they were kind of just blindsided by breast cancer. They couldn't take steps to prevent it. They couldn't take steps to protect themselves. But obviously, this is a very serious topic, but we hope that the book does, and the whole concept of the word Previvors is all about hope and empowerment and the fact that you could take steps to fight this disease before it even strikes. And that's something the previous generations couldn't do. And we're lucky that we can, and our children are lucky that they can. And that's a huge part of just the whole concept of Previvors.
I think you're absolutely right. Having that information available from family history and knowing what the risks are really does give us the ability to take power and control and get the proper surveillance or the proper changes in our lifestyle or whatever we need to handle our risk of cancer. I think that a lot of women, when they are first find out that they're a Previvor, maybe they didn't have enough family history, are sort of in a very intense, stressful place. So I was hoping Lisa could talk about long-term Previvorship and how it can change from the decision-making process so that women could feel like that one day things will get better.
Absolutely, and I actually talk to a lot of women about that still today. I still get phone calls from a friend's friend who found out that they tested positive and they made the decision to have surgery, and you know, it's many times in the Previvors talk about before and then after surgery. You know, there's 2 points. There's leading up to it, which is very stressful, anxious, you're nervous, you question yourself, and then once you have the surgery, I mean, obviously it's permanent, but you then move on. And what I tell everyone I counsel is once you make whatever decision it is, you need to move on. And it can't define you. I mean, hopefully you can pay it forward and help somebody else. But from my personal experience, I don't live thinking about it all the time anymore at all. It changed, I mean, from a stress level, it dramatically dropped. It's something that I'm aware of and I think about. And I will always help another woman if they call or contact me, but it doesn't define me anymore. It used to define me. And as a Previvor, once you do your homework and decide what you're going to do, life does get better because we're lucky. I view it, you know, some people say you're not lucky if you have the gene, but you're lucky that you have information because many people don't have information of what could maybe strike and hit them in the future. So we're lucky that the information's there and there are resources like FORCE and we can move forward and make decisions and prevent getting the disease.
I think that that's really a fabulous point, and I think that gives a lot of sort of hope that things are going to get better to women who are facing this. So, yeah. Dina, was there anything that surprised you when you were writing this book that you didn't expect to find out?
To be honest, I just, the entire time I was writing the book, I could not believe that there wasn't a book out there already. Now there are several books, but at the time I just couldn't believe how many women are living with risk, and you know, they really didn't even know their options. One thing, I don't know if it surprised me, but one thing that was kind of frustrating, and I know I've spoken with FORCE at this as well, there are the people that get involved with FORCE, the people that have read our book, the people who are in the know. And they know what their options are, and they know that, but it's the people who don't, and that's what's scary, is there are a lot of people, in terms of the latest statistics, about 1 in 500 people have a BRCA mutation, but less than 5 or 10% know that they do. That's scary. That means up to 90% of people out there that have BRCA mutations don't even know that they're at risk. That's why we strongly encourage everyone, the number one thing is to know your family history. Talk to your doctor, possibly see a genetics counselor if you think you might be at risk. Know the red flags, such as having any ovarian cancer in the family, male breast cancer in the family, such as that Lisa had. If there's multiple people in the family, you see clusters of people on the same side of the family that have cancer, that could be a sign. If people get diagnosed at a young age, and it's very, very important. This is what gets lost a lot, is that it's both sides of your family, your mother's side and your father's side. People think, even some doctors still think, that they're only supposed to be looking at the mother's side of the family. That is not true at all. A man is just as likely to have a BRCA mutation as a woman, and they're just as likely to pass it on. And you know, we have a whole chapter in the book, The Hidden Killer in Men, because people just don't think of breast cancer being related to men at all, and it is. And so, you know, that's just our message.
Excellent, thank you. So just to close off, Lisa, do you have any messages for new Previvors or Previvors out there? What the one thing you would want to say so that they feel like they've got the support they need?
What I would say is you're lucky that you have time to figure out what you need to do. You need to do your homework. There's excellent surveillance out there, and that could be a decision you choose for a very long time. And there are other options out there too. So know your options. Reach out, go through FORCE, talk to people on the boards, try and meet and talk to other women that have been through this, because it'll help you tremendously get through it all. You'll know what to expect. And in the end, you'll come out stronger and you're reducing your risk. And that's what it's all about. We don't want, if you have a heads up that you may be at high risk for cancer, we want to do everything possible to prevent you from getting it. And you're lucky that you could do that, because not every woman is lucky and has the time on their side, and you do.
Excellent, thank you. And Dina, where can we find your book?
You can find it on Previvors.com. You can find it through Amazon. You can find it on my website, DinaRothport.com. Do a Google search for Previvors and it should come up, but it's Previvors Facing the Breast Cancer Dream, Making Life-Changing Decisions.
Oh, thank you both so much for joining us today. I think that we got a lot of information out there that'll help Previvors get through. We also have information at our website, www.facingourrisk.org, where you can see a lot of expert-reviewed information, find out where we've got support groups throughout the country, and go to the message boards and meet other Previvors, just so that you know you're not alone. There's many women who want to be out there to help you. So thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much.